Good morning and welcome to 4th Avenue United Methodist Church. Whether you're here with us today in person or on Zoom, we are delighted that you're here. I was thinking as I was coming into town today, I remember 21 years ago this day, 9/11, where I was and what I was doing when we heard the terrible news. I guess for my generation, it's kind of the day of infamy that Roosevelt talked about, but it was a very scary and sad time for our country and for all of us. So as we're praying today, I hope we will keep that in mind. On a more exciting note, I am so delighted to see Julie Hagen-Love here. There's a lot of wonderful information about Julie and all the things that she has done over the years that she's been in Kentucky, and it's part of a dynamic duo with your husband, Todd. We're delighted, but I want to tell you about something that probably most of you don't know about Julie. You probably think she's just a ladylike, wonderful person. I want to tell you that this lady knows how to swing a hammer and how to build a house. About 25 years ago, we had the opportunity to be together in Eastern Kentucky, and we helped build the Methodist house for Habitat for Humanity. And on the positive side, we all got to meet Jimmy Carter along with it, so it was really a wonderful time. And I hope, Julie, you still have your hard hat. I've still got mine down the basement with my name written on the front of it. But we are so delighted, and I know that Jose will give a much longer introduction, but I just want to thank you for being here. It's a real pleasure. Also, just to remind you, in your bulletin, Wednesday night will be a study from the upper room, and I hope most of you can come. And then another exciting thing coming up is the homecoming, 4th Avenue United Methodist Homecoming. It's been a long time, hey, Christy, since we've had a homecoming, and so this will be a particularly delightful one. You can see our food supply is growing, and I'm going to be taking this down to CLCM this week a day. But that doesn't mean you have to stop bringing food. We'll have a little basket in the hallway, and you can continue to do that. One other thing I wanted to remind you of, two things. One, I want to let you know that yesterday this room was packed jam full. We had 70 guests that came through our resource. I say our resource, and I mean St. Paul United Methodist Church in 4th Avenue's Resource Center. We served 70 of our neighbors and friends, and it was a delightful day. The other thing that I do want to remind you about is Give for Good, which is on September the 15th. I can't imagine we haven't heard about Give for Good, because every nonprofit in the city of Louisville is vying for your dollar. So just remember, go to the Open Door Give for Good site and give generously. Thank you. If you will open your bulletin and join me in the opening prayer. Loving and living Lord, as we welcome you into our midst, we call upon you to hallow this time, that we may know your blessings and you may know our devotion, that we may know your presence and you may know our worship, that we may know your will and you will know our willingness, that we may know you in the silence and you may know us in our praise. Amen.
Please stand as you are able and turn in your hymnal to 462, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus." "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus and to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise and to know, thus saith the Lord, Jesus
morning, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the house of the Lord, which we call Fourth Avenue. Let us come to the Lord in prayer. God, as we come this morning to you, we ask that you take this time that we are taking apart to be with you. We ask that we not only dedicate it to you, God, but we dedicate ourselves to you so that we may be filled with your love, filled with your spirit, filled with your grace, God, so that we may pour out that love, grace, and spirit in the heart of the city, God. I ask that as we come and we worship, I ask that you speak to us, God, those words of life that we need. But Lord, also, we ask for those that are not with us because they're ill. We ask that your holy hand go out to them, wherever they may be it their bed, be it their home, be it their hospital bed. I ask that at this moment, God, may your hand, your healing hand, be upon them. And may they know, God, that at this moment, your people are praying for them. And Lord, we ask for this mission field that you have called us to. We ask, God, that you see that the work is plenty. And we need workers, God. So send workers to pick up your harvest, so that people all around here may know that you are the God of love, the God of grace, the God that has never stopped loving them. Allow us to be that in this place, in this neighborhood, in this city. I ask this in your name. Amen. Please open your hymnals to hymn number 139, Praise to the Lord the Almighty. We will be singing verses 1, 4, and 5. Hymn number 139.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. Oh, my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. Oh, yeah, now to his temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord, who doth nourish thy life and restore thee, fitting thee well for the tasks that are ever before thee. Then to thy need, God as a mother doth speed, spreading the wings of grace o'er thee. Praise to the Lord, oh let all that is in me adore him. All that hath life and breath, come now with praises before him. Let the Amen sound from his people again, gladly forever adore him. You may be seated.
I will be reading from the Word of God from Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 14. For those of you that don't have a Bible, you can find this in your program. Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 14, the Word of God says, "At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, 'Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' He called a child whom he put among them and said, 'Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believes in me, it would be better for you if a greater milestone were fastened around your neck and you were drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of the stumbling blocks occasioning for stumbling are bound to come. But woe to the one by whom the stumbling block comes. If your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or lame than to have two hands or 2 feet, and to be thrown into the eternal fire. And if your eyes cause you to stumble, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with one eye than to have two eyes and to be thrown into the hell of fire. Take care that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you, in heaven, their angels continually see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If a shepherd has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountain and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones should be lost." This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Amen. Brothers and sisters, it is a great privilege for me to present to you our speaker this morning. Uh, uh, April actually spoke a little bit about her this morning. But for those of you that don't know much about her, I want to tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Reverend Julie Love, and she was born and grew up in Berea, Kentucky. She attended Kentucky Wesleyan College before transferring to Berea College, where she graduated with a degree in religion. There, she met her husband, George, and they have been married for over 30 years. They have 2 adult children, Cameron and Eliza. After graduating from Berea College and getting married, Julie and George attended Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Julie worked at the Minister for Children and Family at St. Paul United Methodist. After seminary, the Loves moved to St. Charles, Missouri, where Julie again served as children's minister at First United Methodist Church at St. Charles. Next, they moved back to Kentucky. And this time to Prestonsburg. There, Julie worked part-time in several ministries, including life skills teaching through the Big Sandy Area Development District, teaching at Big Sandy Community College, and district ministry consulting with the Prestonsburg District of the Sandy Community College, and district ministry consulting for the Prestonsburg District of the United Methodist Church. Prior to coming to the Methodist Children's Home, Julie served for 15 years as the Director of Connectional Ministries for the Kentucky Conference of the United Methodist Church. There, Julie oversaw the various ministries of the conference, including camps, campus ministries, age-level ministries, communications, missions, and much more. She was appointed to the Kentucky Methodist Children's Home as the president and CEO on July of 2019. Brothers and sisters at 4th Avenue, please welcome Reverend Julie Hager Love.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. Thank you, Jose, who's a friend for many years. And I really appreciate this invitation to get to share with you about the ministry that you support through Fifth Sunday offerings and much more. I will point out that the next Fifth Sunday offering is October 30th, because that's my job and I point out things like that. But I want to ask you, does anybody remember the song by the Carpenters, Rainy Days and Mondays? It's a great song. Rainy days and Mondays always get me down is one of the lines. If you don't know it, get on Spotify after worship and listen to it. It's a great song. But I don't know about you, but during the whole COVID pandemic and everything that's been happening in our world in the past 2 to 3 years, a lot of things have been difficult. And I've had a few rainy days and Mondays. I want to share with you about one of the young men in one of our residential programs at the children's homes who had a bad Monday. He had a bad Monday. He acted out a bit and had a hard time. But our staff helped him, worked with him, and on Tuesday, he wrote a note to the staff and apologized for his behavior. And he said in part, "I'm sorry, I know I can do better." And then he wrote these words that I don't think I'll ever forget. He said, "I have never felt so loved. It is kind of nice to know that you are loved." Isn't that true? It is kind of nice to know that we are loved. I don't know if you've been paying attention. I'm a lifelong Kentuckian. I love this state, but we do not do well for our children. We just don't. We are one of the worst states for child abuse and neglect. And the well-being of children, we have moved overall from worse to worse in Kids Count Data book, if you know that, but it's not good enough. We do not do well for our children. So I'm going to invite you as I share about what Jesus said about children and some of our stories through the children's home to think about children in your community, in this state, and frankly around the world that we are called to care for. Now, at the children's home, I can tell you that together as Methodists, we have been paying attention to children and youth for over 150 years. In fact, we're in our 151st year of ministry with the children's home. We started in 1871 after the Civil War when Methodists said, we need to care for these orphans from the war, and at that time, we cared for widows as well. Our mission is to serve Christ by providing for the physical, emotional, educational, and spiritual needs of children and families. And in 2021, during a pandemic, we served 923 children, youth, and families through all of our services. We have sites in Nicholasville and Owensboro and in Lexington, but we do work around this state. Now, while we began as an orphanage, like I said, after the Civil War, we serve children in many different ways now. We still do some residential care, and that is caring for children who have been removed from their homes because of abuse and neglect, and they are in state custody, but we care for them. These are kids that have often been in 20 different placements, in foster homes or other places, by the time they come to live with us. And so we are working to help them know that they are loved and know that somebody cares about them, and to work with them on behavior and getting medication straight and all kinds of things. Now, I'll tell you, the state does give us a daily stipend for their care, but trust me, it doesn't come close to covering the kind of care that you want to give them, that we want to give them. So we have a nurse on site to care for their health needs. Of course, we have staff with them 24/7. We have a gym. In Nicholasville, we have a school on site in conjunction with Jessamine County Schools. This summer, our girls from Owensboro got to go to Lucan and have a wonderful time. We want our children to have the best things in their lives, just like you want for all the children in your community and in your lives. But we do more than just residential care. In fact, that's our smallest program. We also care for children who have aged out of our care or foster care. When they turn 18, they can come live in our apartments, and we care for them till they're 21. Now, my husband and I have 2 young adult children, and when they turned 18, they thought they were grown up and they didn't need us anymore. But they soon learned that it was good to have somebody to call home and maybe care for them and maybe occasionally write a check for them or something. But we care for them, you care for them in apartments in Lexington and Owensboro where we help them get a job, keep a job. Did you know that when you get a job, they expect you to be there every day and they expect you to be there on time? So we teach things like that. We teach budgeting. We teach how to get into college. We have several that are taking college classes as well. I heard about one this week who was getting all A's at the University of Kentucky. And we're there to help support her in what she is doing. You are there to help support her. So we do that. The young man that I shared about at the beginning, who was having a hard day, actually graduated from our residential program and moved to our independent living. And while he was there, he was attending a United Methodist Church in the area, and where he was seen and celebrated, and he was baptized. What a difference you have made in his life to know that he is loved by people at the children's home and people at a local church. What a difference. But we do even more than residential care. We would love nothing better than to keep families together and keep them out of the state children's welfare system, which there are great people who work in it, but it is better to keep kids out of that system and care for them in their families. And so we do a lot of community-based programs where we provide counseling and services for children and families. We also have an adoption program, and we have an extensive program with the Department of Juvenile Justice in almost every county in this state. Through all these programs, we served 923 families last year. We also realized that our kids have been through so much trauma. We talked about the trauma at 9/11. I think the racial reckoning trauma is significant for our children. Also, the trauma coming out of COVID. We are seeing an uptick in the number of children experiencing mental health issues, and our phone is ringing off the hook for referrals from families and especially from schools right now. I want to tell you about one young lady who we were able to care for in our community-based services. She'd had a lot of trauma in her young life, from physical to other kinds of trauma, and she developed an eating disorder. And our therapist started working with her about forming relationships and her worthiness and how intelligent she was. And after working with our therapist, she learned and began to articulate that her trauma was not her fault, and she realized how her childhood impacts her. But she became more confident and was able to do small talk and was learning to address her emotions. And she is talking about attending college and even graduate school today. What a difference you are making in these children's lives. So think about the scripture that Jose read for us earlier, the verses from the 18th chapter of Matthew. We hear Jesus being serious, don't we? Serious about taking care of children during his time and during our time as well. As one commentator I read said, Jesus doesn't mince words. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And what did Jesus do? He put a child among them and said, "Become like this child, and you will welcome me." And further, Jesus said, if any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones, it would be better for you if a great millstone were fastened around your neck and you were drowned in the depth of the sea. Yeah, Jesus is being pretty serious, isn't he? 3 times in this whole passage, he reminds us of these little ones. And isn't it interesting that it was an exchange that started with the disciples coming to Jesus and asking, who is the greatest? Thinking that maybe perhaps one of them was the greatest. And what does Jesus do? He turns it around like he does with so many things and reminded them that humility and seeing children were the greatest. Together, we are following Jesus by caring for these little ones. I've been in this ministry, as Jose said, for over 3 years now, but I still remember the first year when I was in my office and I was going over our budget and the financials, and to be honest with you, I was getting a little bit stressed. The money is always sometimes difficult, but we do believe in a God of abundance, and y'all always come through with those donations. But I decided it might be better to go take a walk. And so I walked over to the dining hall on campus, and our youth care workers were having their weekly meeting. And they were all around the dining hall sitting and talking about this one young lady. And I knew she'd had a hard night the night before, but they were all talking about this one young lady. And one of them said, I've noticed that she likes journaling. And another said, she has more issues in the evening, so when the sun goes down, we need to give her more attention. And they just went round this circle, and they talked about this one young lady we were caring for. And as I listened to that, you know how you can read scripture maybe your whole life, and then you read it again, and you think, that's what Jesus was talking about. Or you see something, and you realize that's what that meant. All I could think as I read that was about the passage from today when Jesus said, you leave the 99 and you go after the one. What do you think if a shepherd has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray? Does he not go after the one and leave the 99 on the mountains? And if he finds it, truly, I tell you, he rejoices over it more than the 99 that never went astray. Jesus was reminding me, was reminding all of us of that one young lady was the most important thing at that moment. One young lady whose family wasn't able to care for her, who had been through several foster homes, who the world was saying was not important. The staff at the children's home were going, we're going to care for her. I would invite you to consider ways to support us. In the back, there's a table with a display of some, if you don't get our children's voice, we would love for you to get a copy of it and some pamphlets on our ministry. And I have to tell you, there's also an offering envelope inside. Or get a pen or get a magnet and put that magnet on your refrigerator and take a pen. And every time you see the pen or the magnet or some of our literature, I invite you to pray for us. Pray for our staff, pray for our children, pray for the staff to come. We are hiring and would love to care for even more by getting even more staff with us. We'd love for you to come visit sometime too and see your ministry. I want to share 2 stories with you as I end. One of the things we do in the summer, I mentioned earlier, we took some of the girls to Lucan to have a great summer camp experience this summer. One of the things we did one summer, and we often do, is take groups of kids to the library for their teen program. So this happened one day, and a group of girls were actually there, and they were at this program at the local public library. And after the program, the library was serving a meal. They were serving lunch. And the staff said a woman came in who looked to be probably homeless, maybe definitely needed a meal. And she asked the library staff if she could eat. And the library staff said, no, this food is just for the kids. And your girls heard that, and here's what they did. They all took something off their own plate to give to her. Now, here's the thing. Most of these kids have known what it was like to be hungry, probably at some point in their life. But they knew they were safe, and they knew that when they got back to the campus, Mr. Fred and his staff would have a hot meal waiting for them. And there would be more than enough snacks for them to eat. And they've been taught about God's love, and they knew one of the things you do was you share that. And so they shared their food on that day. Do you remember the girl I talked about caring for the one who had had the bad day? She was at the point where she was going to leave our care. She was going to live with a family member in another state. And she came up to me excited and said, Miss Julie, have you heard that I'm leaving? And I said, I've heard. Know that you are loved. Know that you are prayed for. And know that we will miss you. And she looked at me and she said, I know that I'm loved. And I know that there are people praying for me, which is really amazing because when she first got to us, she wanted nothing to do with God. And then she said, and I think I will be missed because I'm kind of a favorite around here. When I told that to the staff, they said, she's right. Here's the thing. Isn't that what we want for all the children in our lives, in our community, in the world? To know that they are loved and they are a favorite. Thank you for your support of Kentucky United Methodist Children's Homes, where for 151 years we have cared for the least of these that Jesus reminded the disciples and us of. Thank you for seeing children and youth in your community, in your state, and the world, and for your continued support as we live out our mission to serve Christ by providing for the physical, emotional, educational, and spiritual needs of children and families. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Brothers and sisters, we are truly blessed. We are blessed not only to be able to have everything we need in our lives, but also that through what we have to be able to care for other people that we did not even know about until today. So as grateful people, people that have been blessed by God, we're going to prepare our hearts and prepare our time for giving. We're going to give our gifts and our tithes. I'm going to ask our ushers to please come up. And also remember that after the service to please go to the table, which will be back there, and speak with Reverend Julie Hager Love and find out how you too can support this ministry. If our ushers could please come up. let us sing the song that is found in your bulletins. It is Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord.
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. See you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you.
Brothers and sisters, if you could have a seat for just one moment, I'm going to ask Joyce Ware to please come up. She wants to share one announcement with us, and then we will have our benediction.
I want you all to know that I attended, Beth and some of the others, Margaret, the World Day of Prayer on Saturday at Quinn Chapel. And we had a really wonderful time. The COVID prevented it from taking place last year, but normally this is an annual function or event that happens in March. So they wanted to get it in. So we did it last Saturday. Now in 2023, we will try to do it in March. And there's a possibility that it may be here at 4th Avenue. We had scheduled one for this time, but they asked us if we would go in with Quinn Chapel, and we were happy to do so. We had a wonderful time. And a lot of canned goods and some other things was taken up for our open door ministry. Bill helped me bring them in a little while ago, so it's downstairs. And I just want you to know that we had a wonderful time, and Fourth Avenue is alive. We're still here, and we're still lifting up God's name. And we want everybody to know that we are still here and that we love you in the heart of the city.
Brothers and sisters, Christ our Lord taught us that we should make sure that we care for that one, the one that maybe many have forgotten, maybe many did not even know about, but that is the one that God has their eye on. So as we go out today, go out knowing that God has his eye on that one. And whoever that one is, show the love, show that they are loved, show that they are cared for, and show that they're their favorite. God bless you. We'll see you next week.